You know what? All last night's comments on my Andor review genuinely made my day. This conversation matters. Let's talk. I was planning to do part 2 anyway, since part 1 only covered the first 6 installments, and now that the series has sadly concluded, I'm going to do justice to the rest of the show. Though the second half's episodes improved dramatically, and I'll highlight them, fundamental flaws remain. Here's my breakdown. And yes, you are hearing me right. I got a new voice, which means a new voice, a new era. Was it necessary? Absolutely. Do you agree? Thought so. Oh, and make sure to watch until the end. I've got some really cool stuff lined up that I think you'll enjoy. I want you to get to know me better, and by the end of this review, I hope you'll understand what I meant back in part 1. To be clear, Andor is Star Wars' best since Empire. I think the overall tone of the second half of the season felt more cohesive and thoughtfully constructed as part of the larger story, in contrast to how Andor Season 2 initially began. Just by observing the narratives and mini-adventures, those successfully executed in the first, and only partially attempted and somewhat succeeded in the second, it becomes evident that there's a noticeable gap in quality. For the record, I was one of those fans waiting for The Force Awakens to revive the magic, only for it to ultimately lead nowhere. I'm part of the 94 VHS original trilogy crowd. Jokingly ruined me for life and permanently shaped my Star Wars values. Plenty of franchise entries have let me down over the years, but Andor managed to reignite my excitement, casting new light on this enduring space saga. It did a great job tying the stories together, but in others, at least for me, it left an empty void that now makes me want to know more. I think the core issue was that the story felt tightly bound to Rogue One, focusing almost exclusively on one central objective: the Death Star. The previous season allowed for more narrative breathing room ahead of the events of the film, a release I didn't initially care much for, despite appreciating its striking visuals and distinctive settings. I mean, it's always enjoyable to see stormtroopers in unconventional environments, like the middle of a wheat field or on a tropical beach. At the end of the day, we came here to see something new. That said, I was a bit disappointed we didn't get Gareth Edwards' original version, as I believe the reshoots and re-editing of that movie clearly diluted his vision, one I was eager to experience in full. So yes, Andor Season 2 delivered in more ways than one. It paid off several setups introduced earlier in the season. However, in my view, it still lacked a sense of adventure. And by adventure, I mean those smaller-scale escapades that gradually evolve into something grand, almost effortlessly.
Is that the best you got?
In Season 2, it felt like a great deal of effort was put into juggling too many plot lines, trying to convince us, the viewers, that something monumental was unfolding. Yet the execution and build-up to many of these moments didn't feel fully earned. Take this for a spin: the scene where Clea and Lunny remove the listening device from the artifact. We already knew it was planted there, and I thought this was the perfect setup for some genuinely tense edge-of-your-seat drama. But despite having some of the best actors in the room, the scene came off surprisingly light. And to be honest, at the end, we didn't even see how she removed the device. That felt like a missed opportunity. But okay, let's not nitpick any further. Some things just are what they are. I assume the central adventure of Season 2 is the Ghorman Situation, but neither the setting nor the surrounding plot lines or characters felt compelling enough to warrant losing a major character like Cinta. Not like this. I must highlight one element that reached an extraordinary level of execution in Season 2, the climax of the Ghorman arc. When Cyril walks through the crowd amid a full-blown blaster riot, the sound design alone deserves an Oscar. I've never experienced a Star Wars firefight like that. Close, intimate, and utterly raw. Turn up the volume, and let's listen. You get the idea. And even though the scene dragged slightly, and we all pretty much sensed Cyril would be sacrificed midway through the show, the creatives behind that sequence made us feel like we were absorbed in the heart of the conflict. That was masterful. Thank you for such an incredible experience. The exceptional sound effects returned once again, when we finally heard Andor's ship engine ignite. I'm fairly certain the audio design team made deliberate enhancements this season to elevate the sound to a whole new level. I honestly can't remember the last time I felt this satisfied with the sound effects in a Star Wars story. Or wait, maybe here. I guess the pod race, by today's standards, can almost be thought of as a different movie. Or a movie within a movie. Because it's just so different. Anyway, before we jump to the final conclusion of this review, let me highlight one more sequence from Andor that was right up my street. We all knew that Luthen would eventually die, and his death was brilliantly executed, at his safe house, where he always shined in every scene he was in, even when Dedra came to see him. And it was clear this would be a confrontation concluding 2 seasons worth of storytelling. Dear movie lovers, how cool was it to finally see them in the same frame? Of course, the smart move would have been not to approach him alone, but to have reinforcements follow immediately. Still, I was okay with Dedra wanting to have a bit of a chat before finally putting her hands on Axis, her all-time nemesis. And just to clarify, Dedra gave Luthen the time, not on purpose. He needed to come up with a way to self-destruct before she was able to properly question him. I really liked that she was called out for this later on. It's how the writers smartly justified what initially felt like an illogical decision. I give credit where credit is due, and in this case, it worked well. And I'll go even further. The setup that followed, with Clea sneaking into the hospital, where Luthen was being kept alive, distracting the guards with her bombs, and later the scenes where Supervisor Hurt was tracking her on CCTV, not to mention that entire empire. Let's find this person operations room. Brought out some of the most intense Jason Bourne-style energy.
He's picking us apart.
Flood it! Get anything you can of it.
Once again, I loved how Andor stepped out of its comfort zone to give us something fresh, something with emotional weight and genuine excitement. But, as I mentioned in my previous video, I was still hoping for more memorable and distinctive supporting characters, which the series didn't quite deliver. That being said, I genuinely appreciated the continued development of our core characters like Dedra, Luthen, Clea, and Partagaz. In fact, the character work was impeccable. I would have loved just a bit more time to see these brilliant actors continue to thrive. In conclusion, I still believe Andor is a masterwork of a series, and the team behind it should absolutely keep creating ambitious and authentic stories like this, especially within this fantasy universe that clearly deserves far more than what it's been given in recent years. So, would I recommend Andor Season 2? Yes, totally. You should definitely tell your friends to watch it. It's a high-caliber series that comes along rarely. By the end of the final episode, I was left wanting more. And I sincerely hope they find a way to carry forward this gritty, grounded, and exhilarating Star Wars storytelling. Dear movie lovers, that's all for now. But stay tuned. And if you don't mind, please do subscribe. I've got something special coming up very soon. Watch more films. Enjoy life. Because summer is just around the corner. And I'll see you next time.